We're here with Richard Winger, Mayor of Vero Beach. Richard, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, as always, Mark.
Thank you. I thought we could have a conversation with you about where you see the city now and what you see as important in the next year of your term, of your two-year term, which will begin here in November. So in terms of where the city's at now, let's talk briefly about the electric utility. I know that that's before the Public Service Commission, and another case may soon be before the courts, so there's a lot you can't talk about. But what can you tell us about where the city's at in addressing its electric utility issue?
Well, as you know, the city has gone down on the power rates in January and in June, a cumulative total of 5.6%, when we still have a long way to go. The city is actively involved in two thrusts, and I went over them in a paper in February. I believe it's still on the city, covb.org. And I said what we had to do is we had to change the governance system to utility authority, and there will be a lot of work determining what that authority looks like. But my view of it is, as long as the return on assets, in other words, the cumulative preferred dividend is paid the owners being the people of Vero Beach, we can have about any kind of governance it would take. I personally would favor some sort of governance where the 60% outside the city had 60% of the votes, as long as the return on the $120 million worth of capital is there. And we've talked about this in public, and I've said this before. I said it in February, I keep saying it, and I think that's something we should do. Our history has been that city councils have made many poor decisions with FMPA repeatedly, with OUC. Not that I have anything against OUC, it's just the contract is too expensive. With Florida Power and Light, we could have taken steps to get us farther than we did. I think we went at it the wrong way. But regardless, I think you got to change the governance, and I think you got to find a way to get business people governing the thing rather than having it a political football. Mm-hmm. The other thing we have to do is lower the rates, and in Peter Gorey's 18 points, there's a number of nickel-dime things that haven't been done yet that can get the rates down 3 or 4%. Personally, I would borrow $3 million a year for a few years until the debt on Stanton 1 is paid off. You've got to remember that we're paying $5 million a year on the utility in debt reduction. We owe $32 million right now. We have one of the best ratios of capital to debt of any utility in Florida, really, and I'll say any utility in Florida. We're very low debt. And to keep paying the debt down, what you could do is that $3 million a year that we're actually, what we're buying is transformers and items like that. And those items then are capitalized and put on the books as fixed investment. But we're paying for fixed investment out of cash. That $3 million could lower the rate 4.5%. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, the major two items that are out there before 2019 are closing or mothballing the plant, and it should be mothballed, not torn down. And then the other one is renegotiating with OUC, and that is doable. I can tell you it's doable. And so they supply 60% of the power. It's too expensive. There are things they'd like to have, things we'd like to have. Without getting into any details, you know, we can get a lot closer to Florida Power and Light. Can we get to Florida Power and Light? Probably not before 2019. Mm-hmm. But we can get a lot closer with the right kind of decisions. Again, going back to the governance, I would rather have business professionals running and governing the utility than the city council.
What do you say to those who dismiss the proposal for utility authority, describing it as just another layer of government?
It perplexes me. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had the same thing. I've been talking about a stormwater utility, and they say, well, it's just another layer of government, but yet the lagoon is dying. And you know, if you listen to political arguments, and you listen to them in Washington or Tallahassee, you'll get caveats. It's just another layer of government. It's not small government. Whatever it happens to be, and I just take them as cliche and saws and cheap responses. But the reality is, I think the people, the 60% outside the city, should have a vote in everything that's decided, with the one exception that I think there has to be a return on the investment that has been made. Mm-hmm. And you know, people say, well, the investment was made out of rates. Well, that's not totally true. But if you go to Publix or you go to Sam's or you buy something from Procter & Gamble, they make a profit, they reinvest the profit, and they make their product line or their system bigger. And that's happened here, but the people who own the system are the people of Vero Beach. And they're entitled to a dividend, not a transfer, but a dividend on that, that investment that they've made. And yes, people pay rates. Yes, people pay for a can of green beans at Publix. But, you know, that doesn't entitle them. But I would like to entitle them, all the people, the 100% of the people. I think it's necessary.
And you could do it in a way where the 60% of the customers outside the city limits could have roughly 60% of the voice in how that utility is run.
Right, and how it's run is everything from setting rates to government oversight to what the new investments will be. It could even include, as long as any capital is refunded, it could even include selling it later on. There would be no restriction. There are 21 or 22 of these around the state of Florida. They're all different. Mm-hmm. There's no simple one that we can just copy. Orlando Public Utility Commission, there, I believe their mayor there sits on it. But there's not, that would all have to be decided. Who sits on it, what power they have. I personally would have the utility authority bring in a professional management company to run the utility. What happens with accounting? Who does the accounting? Does the city continue to do accounting, or is there an outside accounting firm? All those things would have to be determined. And it's probably as complicated as everything we've been through up to now to establish such an entity.
But it would address the issue of what some people call taxation without representation. I realize there's a whole other debate about whether that's a tax or whether it's a profit, and you were addressing that.
It's a profit.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, our profit is 6%. Florida, generally across the United States of America, and certainly in Florida, the Public Service Commission allows 12% profit on invested capital. Here we're dealing with 6%. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason we take a lower rate is because we pay too much for power. We've got to take as low as we can. Mm-hmm. But I pretty believe in the free economy. I believe in business. That's where I've come from. And I think if you invest money, you are entitled to a return. This house you're in, I live in because I get a return from my assets that I have invested, whether it's Nexera or Southern Company or Norfolk and Southern Railroad. I mean, I expect a return.
Mm-hmm. So, however, one might see that issue, the fact that 60% of the people feel unrepresented in decisions about how that utility is run. And this utility authority would address that concern.
It would address that concern, and my concern that city councils are not don't politically have the right background. I mean, we have 7 people running for city council this time. There's probably, without naming names, 2, well, I will name one, Mr. Kramer, but there's probably only one additional person that has the background in the world out there in finance and management that really is qualified to run a utility.
So you would hope to also improve the management of the utility by going to an authority?
I don't think we could help but improve